Okay, these are the two solutions from two quizzes that I gave that a lot of you did poorly on, so I'm just going to go over these two problems. So this was one of them, and this is your function, and you had to find out how many relative extremes there were and how many inflection points. So a relative extreme is just critical points. So you would take the derivative, set it equal to 0, factor, and solve. So then you're going to make a wiggle graph, put those two values on it, and because you're interested in critical points, you're going to substitute this into f prime. And here's f prime right here. So if you do f prime of -1, you will get a negative number. And then if you do f prime of 1, you get a negative number. And if you do f prime of 2, you get a positive number. So you're supposed to be looking for a sign change, and you can see from here to here it just went from negative to negative. There was no sign change. So therefore there is no critical point at x equals 0. Forget that. And at 3/2 you can see it went from negative to positive, so there was a sign change, and therefore there's one critical point at x equals 3/2. So if you look at the choices, you have 5 choices. You're looking for one that has one relative extrema. So A says there's none, so it can't be A. B says there's 2, so it can't be B. C says it has 1, so C's in the running. D says it has 2, so it can't be D. And E says there's 3, so it can't be E, and that's why C is the answer. But just to also continue, just to review, if you also just wanted to make sure that it has 2 points of inflection, so all you have to do is take the second derivative. So let's get all this other junk out of here. Okay, so the second derivative would be this. Set that equal to 0. Factor. And solve. So you have two possibilities here, and you can make a wiggle graph, put 0 and 1 on it, and because this is for an inflection point, you're going to test this into the second derivative, and here's the second derivative right here. So if you take a value such as f double prime of -1, you will get 12 plus 12, so that's positive. And then if you do f double prime of, let's say, 1/2, because you need a number between 0 and 1, you will get 3 minus 6, so that's negative. And then if you do f double prime of a number bigger than 1, such as 2, you get 48 minus 24, so that's positive. So you're looking for sign changes, and you can see at 0 it went from positive to negative, so at x equals 0 that's definitely an inflection point. And at 1 it went from negative to positive, so that was a sign change, so at x equals 1 there's also an inflection point. So that's the answer for that question. Okay, so this was that limit problem, and you need to find out which value is B. So for example, if you look at choice A, choice A was -1. I'm using gray because it's the color of my heart. Ricky, I'm sure that you can totally relate. Okay, so let's look at negative 1. So negative 1 is, I'll do that in yellow, right here. Okay, so it's saying that the limit exists. Well, the limit does not exist, because as I approach negative 1 from the right side, I'm going up to positive infinity, and as I approach negative 1 from the left side, I'm going to negative infinity, and therefore, when x equals negative 1, the limit does not exist, so that cannot possibly be the answer. Okay, so let's try another one. So for b, we're talking about at 0. So let's look at 0. So at 0, does the limit exist? Well, let's see. As we approach from the right, we're at 2. As we approach from the left, we're at 2. So therefore, the limit does exist. But it also has to not be continuous. And you can see that it's not continuous because there's a hole here. So B looks like that's the answer. But I'll go through them all just to explain why the others don't work. Okay, for C, that was 1. So if you look, when x is 1, okay, here, as I approach from the right side, here's my y value. As I approach from the left side, here's my y value, so the limit does exist, but it's not supposed to be continuous, and this is continuous. So C can't be the answer. Okay, and then we'll look at D. D is 2. Okay, so 2, the limit as I approach from the right side is down here. As I approach from the left side, it's up there. So the limit doesn't exist, and the limit's supposed to exist, so D can't be the answer. And then for E, that was 3. So as I approach 3 from the right side, the limit's 1. As I approach from the left side, the limit's 1, so the limit does exist. But it's not supposed to be continuous, and you can see it is continuous. So therefore, C can't be the answer, and B is the answer.